What's up, guys? This is Patrick Hayes. It's been a little while since I've tuned in with you, but today I felt like I wanted to share something. I had some extra time, had an unexpected day free, and so I wanted to share some important things that I feel like are relevant for our path right now. I know it's been a long time since I've come and shared with you guys, and I've been intending on organizing my schedule a bit more to be a bit more consistent, and I actually have some really cool ideas for some things that I want to make available for everybody here really soon. Namely, that I want to start a study group and study with you all, which I think is a great way to for us all to kind of learn as a collective intelligence. And I'll talk more about that, as we move forward. Oh, and for all of you guys that haven't followed me over on Telegram, I'm considering Telegram now more my primary. So if you want to be in the inner circle over there, go ahead and follow me on Telegram, Patrick Hayes Channel or Patrick Hayes Live. That's H-A-I-Z-E. So Patrick Hayes Channel is my channel where I'm just releasing my content. Live, Patrick Hayes Live, is where there's a community chat going on. So go over onto Telegram, follow me there, and that's where from now on I am posting as my primary platform. But what I wanted to talk about today is something that I consider to be extremely relevant and important right now in regards to the place that we are finding ourselves in amongst all of the chaos in the world and all of these different agendas that are rolling out and timelines that are crystallizing. And it's in regards to, I say, like the greater concept that I want to describe is in regards to two primary kind of paths that we're being asked to choose between, and this has to do with the idea of a synthetic kind of transhumanist path and a natural path. And while on the surface that is quite obvious, I think that a clear understanding of what we're actually dealing with in regards to the question, what is a natural path versus what is the synthetic path, and the significance of these two paths, where I think right now things can be kind of blurry as to what kind of things or behaviors or agendas could lead us down a path that's maybe not as natural as we think it is, and where is the boundary line for us? So, and I say this because the culture that we're so embedded in is I mean, we don't know so much outside of that, right? So it's hard for us to really discern what is a natural path versus what is a synthetic path in many circumstances. And on one level, it may be easy to just evaluate, well, living more of a natural life is the natural path, and living more of a synthetic life is more a synthetic path. And that's on certain levels, that's very obvious. But what I don't think is as obvious is the significance of the decision that we're making right now. So I want to talk a little bit about the significance of this, natural evolution versus the synthetic evolution, and kind of position ourselves to perceive where we are in that process and the decisions that we need to make in order to choose which path that we're going to move forward on. So I think one of the key, I have some notes here. One of the key things that I want to describe, and I'm going to try to make this as quick as possible, because it's kind of a lot to explain. But in order to kind of get across the plate an understanding the significance of this natural path, I think we really it's helpful to understand this relationship of macrocosm, microcosm, and the age-old understanding of the human body, the human consciousness being a microcosm of the macrocosm, and really understanding what that is and the part that plays in our own evolution as humans, our own natural evolution. Because in understanding that, there's a significance that then becomes visible to us of the choice that we're faced with right now, while we're kind of standing on the edge of, moving into this crazy sci-fi, dystopian sci-fi world, or preserving what aspects of the natural path that we can in order to further our natural evolution and choose to evolve in alignment with the cosmological and earthen stewards of evolution. So with that said, I want to give a little bit of a breakdown of this macro-micro understanding. So most of you have probably heard that or studied at some point that we are a microcosm of the universe. And so, but what does that actually mean, and how does that practically understood? And so, I think, and I've oversimplified this, but I think a simple way of kind of understanding this is that we can look at it in three parts. There's the father, the mother, and the child, right? And we are the child. So the father could be thought of as Father God, and this is like, in a sense, like the cosmos, or the Father God, the creator of the heavens, and then you have Mother Earth, right? And there are feminine aspects to the Creator God, and there are masculine aspects to the Earth. So I'm not, making this a feminine masculine, exclusivity thing. But again, this is oversimplified just to get a point across the table. So we have the father, and we have the mother, and we have the child, right? And so us being the children, the humans, right? We are a blending of the father and the mother. And both father, mother, and child all have what could be considered three different kind of levels of beingness. One level being the body, the other level being the soul, and the other level being the spirit. So you could look at it like this: the body of the father is like the cosmos. This is like the planets, the stars. This is the like, in alchemical terms they call it the salt, right? What is the matter that makes up the cosmos, right? So this is the body. Then we have the soul of the cosmos, which the soul is what in the beingness of the cosmos, and these are all the different beings that ensoul the cosmos. Or you could think of it in terms of in relation to the human body. The human has a physical body, right? And then we have a soul that ensouls the physical body. And in that same way, the cosmic forces, or like the sun and the moon, right? They are ensouled. So what we're seeing when we see the sun, for example, is we're seeing a physical representation, so like a physical body of the consciousness of higher spiritual beings, right? And these higher spiritual beings, the sun sphere is a whole, collaboration of, higher spiritual beings, right? But in the spiritual realm, things enfold into each other. So, a large number of beings can fold in, kind of like Megatron, and create like one being, kind of like the Transformers, when they come together to create, I think it was called Megatron, that they all come together and then they make a greater being. So, spiritual beings can split apart and do that. It's called, there's a name for it, is combinescence. And this is the combination, the combining of essences. Anyway, without getting too much on a tangent, the point I'm making is that you have the salt, or like the physical aspect of the cosmos, right? You have the soul of the cosmos. The soul is made up of different beings that ensoul these different, aspects of the physical and even non-physical aspects. And then you have the spirit, and you could think of the spirit as, in a sense, kind of like the raw virtue essence that both beings and the physical bodies of beings are made up of at its core, where it's coming from. This is like the greater spirit, right? The cosmic love, peace, or joy. Think of it like that. And again, this is oversimplified. But then you have, Mother Earth, right? So the body of the Mother Earth is made up of earth, air, water, fire, right? It's made up of, the soul of Mother Earth is made up of the elementals that ensoul these elements, right? So the water elementals, or the earth elementals. And then you have, in a sense, kind of like the version of spirit for the physical realm can be thought of, in the life of the physical world, can be thought of as like prana, right? Or life force. And then when you look at the human body, right? So this is, as far as macrocosm, microcosm works, right? You have the macrocosm, right? And you have these three different layers. Then you have the child, right? So the human body and the human being, which is connected to all of those different levels and has a combination of all of those within them. That's what we're actually made up of. So, the human body, we have the body, which is made up of earth, air, water, and fire, right? So our physical body is actually made up of the same elements as the earth is made up. And our soul, the human soul, is made up of beingness also, in the same way that the soul for the cosmos is made up of the beings that are behind, say like the sun or the moon, right? That ensoul those physical aspects. And the elementals, or the angelic beings that are working with the elementals, that ensoul the elements or different elements of nature, right? Just like that, we are ensouled, and our soul substance is made up of the same soul substance of these beings, because it is angelic beings, it is higher dimensional beings that have poured their essences into our own individualities in order to create us. And then the spirit, we are a blending of both the virtue in our spirit and prana, right? So we have that virtue at the core of the cosmos, right? The love and peace that is kind of at the core of all things, that is the space that all things that create from, or you can think of it almost as like a prima materia in which all things can be created from. And we also have prana in our as it's connected to our physical bodies, right? So chi, prana, moves through us. So in this way, we're very you can start to see this microcosm that exists between our experiences as humans, and then the mother and the father, right? And another way of kind of looking at this is so if you think of the cosmos, or the Godhead, right? So the Father God, you can look at the body, so meaning the planets and the stars, as like organs for the Godhead, right? So these are like anatomy of God. Then you can think of the individual beings and collectives of beings that are ensouling these different organs, right? So the beings, the organ that is the sun, say, is an organ of God, right? And the beings that are ensouling that organ, right, have their own individual consciousness, right? In the same way that in a human body, there are microbacterias, and there are different microbes that have their own intelligence and their own autonomy, but they come together into the human body in order to create a greater organism, right? But they still have their own autonomy and individuality, in a sense. But on a greater fractalized perspective, so do the beings that create, that add different aspects to create, this like organ of God. So you have, the organs, in a sense, and this could be even thought of as anatomy or organs in the Godhead, of the Godhead being, these aspects of the cosmos. You also have the beings behind it that are ensouling it, right? And these are called, these can be thought of as like, smaller, like multi-celled organisms, right? And then you have the spirit, right? And the spirit can be thought of as kind of like the atoms. It's almost like where everything is, this virtue is like the atoms, like, or quarks. You bring it back to its most basic, aspect. And when you break everything down to its most basic aspect, right, it is, like unconditional love. It is these high virtues, and it is the construction from those that create. So in the same way that, like quarks or atoms construct multi-celled organisms, which then can work up the ladder all the way to higher beings. And then there's this like order of what Ken Wilber calls whole-ons. So things that are whole within themselves, but they're also part of a greater whole, right? And may even have their own individual autonomy and awareness, but then combined create a bigger thing, kind of in the same way that I was talking about, the Transformers metaphor. So we have these three different levels, right? And they're very, and so us in being humans, we are a microcosm, literally, of these higher aspects, meaning the Mother Earth and the Father God. So what is our evolutionary path? Well, our evolutionary path is actually to become the macro in the micro, right? So when we activate ourselves, we actually become the macro in the micro. And this is, what our evolutionary goal is as human beings. I'll explain a little bit more about, how that works. So how this connects, I just, gave a lot of physiological kind of correlations in the explanation. But how this connects to our energy bodies, right? So is, and there's many traditions that chart this in different ways. I'm going to borrow from both Taoist and from Rosicrucianism here. But we have the 7 chakras connected to the 7 planetary systems, right? Or the 7 planetary spheres, I should say, right? We also have the three dantians, the 3 different cores of our astral body, of our soul, right? Connected to the different 3 different planetary spheres also. So the moon is the head, the sun is the heart, and the earth is is in the abdomen, right? These are connected to the 3 dantians. So when you activate one of those actual dantians, you actually activate the macro in that. So for instance, the 3rd eye in your chakra system is connected to Jupiter. When you activate your 3rd eye, like actually truly turn it on fully, your 3rd eye becomes the wisdom and the power of Jupiter. That's what it becomes. And you have all of that power coursing through your 3rd eye center, right? And this goes for every different chakra, which is connected to every one of these different planetary bodies, right? All the wisdom of that, you actually become the macro in the micro. And this is the evolution that we're destined for, right? So in these different cosmological and earthen correlates lay very deeply into our entire anatomical structure, right? Both on spiritual anatomy and our physical anatomy. And the Taoist tradition has gone very, very deeply into expressing all of those correlates, right? So you can see that different organs are connected to different planets, right? Different meridians are connected to different star systems, and everything is all connected because everything truly is macro micro. In a sense, we are truly a microcosm of the macrocosm, and these different the different organs that we have, the different meridians that we have, the different chakras that we have, the different energy centers or grail points that we have are all linked to these macrocosmic aspects and actually act like transducers. So when we activate fully, we actually become the macrocosm in the microcosm. And this is what the Christ was a representation of, right? Jesus, the Christ Jesus, was that alchemy completed. And so, and this is even why it's funny, because you can see the misinterpretation of a lot of modern Christian teachings when you start talking about this, because you can see that there was good intent sometimes behind some of the interpretations, but there was a misunderstanding of the esoteric science beneath it, which caused a misinterpretation. And but you can see then in this expression why there is this saying that you'll hear like amongst Christian circles sometimes that will say, don't worship the creation, worship the creator. And this is expressed usually with a bit of disdain for some of the indigenous cultures that in a sense have such a deep connection, say with like elemental aspects of nature, like earth elementals, or they pray to the earth, or they pray to the moon or the stars, and then the Christian perspective will be like, well, no, you're not worshiping the creator, you're worshiping the creation. You have to worship Jesus Christ. Well, what more accurately, the accurate interpretation of what what I'd say, if they were really aware, what they would be saying is that by focusing on the Christ, you're actually focusing on the gift of a being that actually had made all of those connections with and become a true transducing vessel that became the macrocosm in the microcosm. And so therefore it's personified, and in that personification of it, it's easier to correlate it to your own humanness, right? Because it's been done in a human way. Whereas before a being had done that and become the macro, these forces needed to be studied as individual forces only. So you look at like the Essenes work, it's like you're communing. The Essenes communed with the forces of the Heavenly Father and the earthly mother, and they called those forces into their being, so they could express those macro forces through the microcosm of their individuality. But when the Christ came, he had done that already. So now you have like another example to look at. I think looking at them both is very important, right? Is to understand those forces in their expressed form in the cosmos and nature, but then also see that expressed through the being, the Christ, as a way to kind of make it more real for you as a human, like how to do this as a human, right? So it's not that, it's bad to connect with these forces, or speak to these higher aspects of nature, because that's actually what you're communing with. But it's just helpful to be able to have like a human example of it. It's like the template of how a human actually did it, and to focus on that, right? But I think it's valuable to focus on both of those, because ultimately that is, this is the expression of God. So these are the expression of God, and the expression of the divine, earthly mother is expressed through nature and the cosmos. And so when we're connecting with those aspects, we're actually connecting with elements of God, right? And so to just sometimes just simplify it and put an idea of like a anthropomorphized from a reductionist perspective of like living in the physical world, putting an anthropomorphized image on top of it, but not realizing that the forces coming through that image are actually cosmic forces. They're actually divine earthen forces that are expressed with all the power and magnificence that we see, in a storm, or in like the sun as it rises. Like if we don't make that connection, then it's hard to really conceive of the magnitude that can be expressed through, like one human being that is activated, that macrocosm within them. And so I think it's really, helpful to look at it from both perspectives. But it's, obviously become, this thing where it's like, oh, people demonize, looking at it, like looking at the sun, and in a sense, like connecting with it in that kind of deep metaphysical way. But part of that, I think, is the intentional deception that is trying to separate people from our evolutionary path. Anyway, so I kind of went on a tangent there a little bit. But the process is to become the macro, a transducer of the cosmos and the earth through the body and the soul, right? And Christ is the example of that. And so this is why it's so important for us to understand that the choice that we're making right now between this sci-fi world and this more natural path is very, very key. Because when you start looking at what Steiner called the Aramonic Deception, which, by the way, that's it's kind of like the Persian version of Mephistopheles, or the Persian kind of dark lord, which was very specifically like a techno devil. That's kind of what it was. So it was like Anti-Christ through technology. And that's something very key to understand, because in ancient times the the technology was in harmony with the natural world. And these are, like power of the pyramids and things like that. And I won't go into that whole thing right now. But there was a point in history in which the dark spiritual beings that we call the dark side, or the Aramonic beings, they diverted the technological advancement to be the techno-mechanical synthetic technology that we see today, leading to computers and the idea of cyborgism and transhumanism, right? But this is a deviation from the path of our natural evolution. There were certain physicists and stuff that understood more of the, people like Tesla, that understood more of the connection to understanding, how these natural forces work and how to use them in harmony with nature. But everything got brought to this kind of extractive, destructive model of combustion engines and gasoline and the Industrial Revolution, all this kind of stuff, which was a diversion from the path, right? And this was a diversion that was eventually going to land us where we are right now, where we're having to make this choice between, are we going to continue going further into this like technosphere? And not that technology in general is bad, but the technology, again, that we're working with here is one that is separating us from our true empowered core. And when you start looking at how a lot of this stuff is designed, and a lot of the anticipations for how things are going to be in the future, of putting chips inside the body, having synthetic organs, these kinds of things, there's a complete lack of understanding in regards to the power that, say, like an actual organic organ has, right? So, our organs, our physical organs, are connected to these planetary bodies. And if we replace it with something synthetic, it may fulfill the same physiological function on a limited spectrum level that a natural organ would, but it absolutely will not continue the evolutionary option for us to connect with that macro and flow that macro fully through our consciousness, right? So, let's see. And this started way before technology became, turned into even Industrial Revolution and computers. This really, a lot of it is started with just taking us out of the natural rhythms. And I've made videos about this before. There are sun rhythms, there are moon rhythms. Here's just a good example of it. The sunrise and the sunset is hormone therapy. If you watch the sunrise, the photons kickstart hormones in your body. Hormones are extremely powerful. It transforms your body. Look at the hormones that transform a person's body when they're going through puberty. See, like a boy's voice changes and his whole facial structure changes. His body, it's very intense. You see people doing hormone therapy to change sexes. That's how powerful hormones are, right? Every single ancient tradition always watched the sunrise and the sunset. That was always a practice, because the photons affect your hormones in a way that helps you transform. These are our evolutionary stewards, right? And you talk all these different traditions, like the Essenes are always a great example. The Essenes commune with these different forces intentionally. And by communing with these forces, it has a major effect on us, right? So another way of understanding it is that each one of our chakra centers is connected to another glandular center in our body. And when you activate a chakra, it activates the glands in that center, which then when the glands start producing secretions, that enters into your bloodstream and it changes your whole consciousness, right? And so this is the most obvious example of this is a DMT excretion, right, from your pineal gland. And how much, if anybody's experienced that, if you've experienced it, it's incredible what it does for your third eye center and your ability to see into other dimensions and travel in that way, right? So if we're replacing things synthetically, it's locking us from that macro evolution. And you can see how the dark spiritual beings that understand this have been so manipulative in taking people off the course and funneling them into a synthetic reality with the promises of, biotech is going to help us live forever. or we're going to be able to solve all these problems with artificial intelligence, and we'll link ourselves up to the computer and then have information running in our mind whenever we need it. We can just Google inside our own head. Or what's now being promoted as a scary option is this metaverse, right? So, and if you start fast forwarding where that could go, when people start checking in and basically, having this hedonistic experience of all of their, like, getting extreme dopamine boosts from synthetic realities that make the physical reality less appealing, especially if nothing in the natural world that is what inspires us as humans to live in the natural world is being supported. In other words, if there's this really like loud, fun techno world that we can plug into, and the physical world's a dystopia, people are just want to check out all the time. We're already in this checkout kind of consciousness where people spend all their times on their phone, or they're doing whatever they can to escape. And what kind of ultimate escape is that? To go into this virtual reality world, right? But what does that do is that further cuts us off from the power that exists by connecting to the cosmos and to the earth, right? Because this is what will actually evolve us in the direction that we're designed to evolve. And so you can see, it really is, this is the Anti-Christ path. The Christ path is connecting, right? The Anti-Christ path is to disconnect us with chips and weird, connecting up to electromagnetic fields that are synthetic and blocking us from our connection to the macro and funneling us off into this realm that is controlled by these darker demonic entities, right? So as much as they've taken us out of the natural flow by putting us on 40-hour work weeks, by taking us and putting us under synthetic lights, by creating this synthetic reality that takes us away from the hormone boost that we get from the sun and the cyclic rhythms of nature and the cyclic rhythms of the seasons, and putting us in these strange altered mentalities and altered biologies, we still had access. For the most part, we were still inhabiting the realm of natural law, the realm of the cosmos, the realm of the physical earth. But the more and the more that they take us away from that and put us into a synthetic reality, then we're literally losing contact with the divine law of God. And we're entering into a realm that's more and more controlled. And so you can see it started with, we were on natural law, and then the humans got together and started creating synthetic laws. And essentially, it's like creating a game within a game, right? So, you play Monopoly, like you enter into an agreement that these are the rules and you're going to play by this game, right? But that's not the natural law. The natural law, the created by God, is the law that we exist in. That water freezes at this temperature, karma exists. If you do this thing, this is going to come back. But then you can create a smaller, realm of agreements and laws to live within. And if there are people that have convinced everyone to play that smaller game, then within that game, the gods of that game are the creators of that law. So you can see that the box got smaller when society developed and created all these, the things that I've been mentioning, right? All these normalities now that have been integrated into people's everyday life of this is how society works, right? Well, that gets smaller and smaller and smaller the more we give control over to forces that create more stringent parameters for how we can operate. And so stepping into meta world, right, and you see where this goes, it's like that entire dimension or universe is completely controlled. And even your experience of what you see, right? So, I mean, we can go out and look at a tree, and we're looking at divine law in expression. But if we're walking around inside a meta world, and we're looking at a tree, it's like they actually control that tree. So we're really within their realm, and then you could fast forward that, and next thing we're in those pods of the Matrix, right? So you can see where that goes. But this is this synthetic path. So with all that said, ultimately the point that I'm trying to make is that we're at a crossroads right now. And I'm not trying to completely demonize technology altogether. I'm not saying that there's zero that there's zero purpose for engaging on these. But I have been wrestling with what is healthy a lot recently, and this is why I've been offline. I've deleted all the social media apps off my phone, and I haven't been going on at all any platforms. So I'm trying to find like what is the actual like healthy relationship to this stuff. You know, and it's not that we are supposed to completely remove ourselves from the technosphere, because in a way I feel that we need to upload the natural, you know, things that support the natural path into that, like what I'm doing right now, because that's helpful. But at the same time, we got to realize that everything that we're uploading, everything that we're going on is, in a sense, can become weaponized against us too. Because without going too deep into it, there's like an AI version of every single one of you with a file, and that file is its own AI that mimics how you think and act, and a test can be run to see how you would respond to a particular thing. So as I'm explaining all this info, this is all, you know, now part of, I'm giving them that is data about me and how I think and how I operate, and an AI eventually in the future could be used to try to like psych me out or trick me based off understanding everything about me. Right? So on one sense, it's like I don't want to keep uploading and giving the information away. I would rather work personally with people, especially because the energy field transfer that happens when you're in the flesh with somebody is something that can't actually happen through technology in the same kind of way. It's much more powerful in person. You guys probably experienced that. I mean, imagine making love to somebody through a camera. It's just not the same, right? But where exactly to land there, I'm not sure. You know, as far as like what exactly is the right amount, of time to interact with these technologies. But what I do know is that the more that we surrender to the pace and the normalities of the Matrix world, the more the Matrix world has us. So, in a sense, the more time we're spending on technology, the more that is affecting us in a way that makes us more like the beings that are creating this technology, and more of a slave to those beings. So it's time for us to start making a choice. And what we're going to have to do, inevitably, is we're going to have to give up a tremendous amount of comfort and convenience in order to take our own evolutionary power back. And you know, I've talked about this many times in regards to living a sovereign kind of lifestyle. But it's really game time at this point. Like, we really got to start making those decisions, because the more we become dependent, I mean, you see how it happens, right? Can anyone drive now without navigation? I mean, we used to be able to read maps. Most people probably can't read maps. I tried to actually go across the country, or not across the country. I tried to drive several states and not use my phone to book any hotels or do anything like that. And I only made it a few days before I ran into this issue where every single hotel was booked, and like I hadn't looked it up. I ended up having to use the technology. I mean, it's really difficult to navigate without using technology today, right? And if that technology is making us hand over freedoms and hand over our divine connection in order to get that convenience, we might have to learn how to live without those conveniences if we really want to, you know, like preserve our souls. Because it may seem arbitrary, you know, it's like getting directions, but it's like, you know, baby steps, and enough baby steps, you're in a completely different world, right? So at some point we have to set a boundary and say, I'm not going to continue going down that path. Now, exactly what it looks like, I don't know. But what I do know is that we have guidance. We have guidance from ancient wisdom traditions. We have guidance from nature itself, right? We have guidance from the cosmos itself, and it's important for us to start accessing that, right? It's important for us to start entertaining the idea and exploring the possibility that when we need to know something, do we have to go to Google? Maybe we don't need to go to Google to answer that question. Maybe we can meditate on that question, and we can talk to the cosmic Google, and the cosmic Google can impart information to us, right? Not that, you know, there's not a space for going and exploring stuff on Google, but But we need to start bridging onto this natural path before it's too late. So I think that's about the gist of what I wanted to share today. And there's definitely a lot of different areas in this conversation that I want to double click on and go further with, and I will at some point in the future. And again, I'm going to try to be more regular with what I'm sharing. I have a video coming up soon that I'm going to make in regards to recognizing the significance of being a traumatized race of humans, right? So, they say that you can't recognize, a crazy society. Being crazy seems like it's normal, right? So you don't recognize that it's crazy. And this is something that we're definitely experiencing. Though I think even most of us do recognize it's crazy, even though we're participating in it. But yeah, so I'm going to talk about that, and I'm going to start this study group that I mentioned, right? So we're going to, for anyone that wants to join, we're going to go through what I consider to be fundamental teachings, fundamental esoteric teachings and philosophical teachings that are absolutely key for us to be able to retain our own spiritual, physical, and psychological sovereignty in a world where everything in the matrix realm is attacking that and trying to steal it from us. So if any of you guys are interested in that, just send me you can put a message, make a comment, or send me a message, and I'll keep you guys posted. So if I don't have your email, send me your email, and then I can put you on a list, and I'll keep you guys posted for the study group. And when that starts, I'm thinking probably in another month or so, maybe early March, I want to get that going. So thanks so much for going on this little journey with me. I think this was a long video, but yeah, I think it was necessary. So yeah, thanks so much for joining me on this, and I wish you the best, and I'm excited to continue to make contact and share more with you. So much love, and I'll talk to you